Seriously?
Hey guys, and welcome to this video with me, 6 Plus Stevo. So, Warhammer 40,000 8th edition, in my opinion, has been an amazing edition. I know this does divide opinion. Already I can feel people smashing that dislike button just for that statement alone. But I've really enjoyed it since it first came out, and we had the indexes and stuff, and it just completely rewrote the book on 40k. 6th and 7th edition for me, not good. Didn't like them at all. I loved sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th edition. Then 6th and 7th for me and a lot of other players I know represented the sort of the dark days of Games Workshop. But yeah, I've really enjoyed the edition, and it's been with us now for a couple of years. And the previous editions of which only lasted a couple of years, and this has brought with it a lot of rumours and speculation that 9th edition could be on the way very soon. I have mixed feelings on this, and this is why I wanted to sort of throw a video together and just talk about it a little bit, and what my thoughts are on it, and what I would sort of like to happen, or just some ideas in my head of where I'd like it to go. Now, very recently, one of the developers, one of the writers of the 40k game, mistakenly sort of blurted out in an interview on, I think it was Warhammer TV, and they were talking to him about the game, and he said, "Oh well, with 9th edition, oh sorry, I mean 8th edition," and that could have just been a slip of the tongue, and people are reading too much into it. Or it could have meant that they're ready to announce it fairly soon, or that he's working on it, which I'm sure he is. I'm sure they probably get working on the next edition long before we see it or hear anything about it. So like I said, it could be people reading too much into it, and maybe 9th edition is quite a way off yet. But previously, going back, 6th and 7th lasted about 2 years, I believe, approximately. They weren't out for very long before we had the next edition. And but previously, before that, they tended to last sort of about 4 years or so, and I liken them to sort of like the generations of consoles. If you're into your computer gaming and stuff, we had like the Super Nintendo and the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 1, 2, 3, etc. And they typically, up until fairly recent years, lasted sort of 4 or 5 years before the next edition come out. And I think for 40k and fantasy as well, or Age of Sigmar, I think that's a nice length of time to really get the most out of the edition, because for me it still feels fairly new, and yeah, it still feels, I don't think I haven't got bored. I'm certainly not bored of it. I'm not crying out for like a new edition to breathe some new life into it, certainly not. But having said that, and all the positive I've said about 8th, the one thing that I think is becoming a bit of a negative is the sheer amount of additions and upgrades and tweaks to it. Now, we've had this in the form of FAQs and erratas and fixes and stuff, which is great. We need those, and it maintains the balance and just tweaks the game and fixes and polishes it and balances everything out, and that is great. But what it has left us with is what originally started out as one book and your index, nice, simple. We had our rule book, we had our indexes, very simple, straight out of the gate. Everyone knew what they were doing. We were all, there was some balancing issues and things, of course there was, but we were all effectively on the same playing field, and that was great. It was a great start, a great way, sort of almost quite a simple way to get into this new edition. Now the indexes very quickly became restricted, and there wasn't a lot of options in there in terms of stratagems and things like that, and warlord traits and things. So we were all using just a couple of specific stratagems for our factions and the ones from the rulebook and stuff. and there were some balancing issues with the game. You know, whoever gets first turn was at a big advantage and things like that. So they tweaked it and they've added things and they've polished it. And of course, we later on, all the factions had their codexes come out, which beefed up our factions, gave us loads of extra options and stratagems, and that was great. But as the game's gone on, we got chapter approved, which added new missions, tweaked new rules and changed things like the amount of command points you got with stratagems, etc. Since this one, there's been another chapter approved, which I don't yet currently own. And then we've had campaign books like Vigilus Defiant and the new Vigilus book, which with them also come with new units and new rules and new missions. And then we've had various codexes come out along the line, and even Chaos themselves have had their next codex now, an updated codex, which has taken some of the stuff from Vigilus and things and added them into a new sort of 8.5 codex, if you will. And so, yeah, just for me alone, sometimes, depending on what sort of army I'm building out of my orcs and things, I have to turn up to a game with this. That's a lot to lug around for a friendly game of 40k. You know, if I want to use one of the detachments from the Vigilus book, if I want to play the new missions from chapter approved and things, if I want to continue to use some buggies or a big mech on a bike, I need to bring my index as well as my codex, and of course the rule book. And this has brought with it obviously some problems. It has complicated the game. What started out as a very sort of streamlined, simple is the wrong word, a streamlined gaming system, one book. It's no longer a one book game. It is you're carting around a small library with you for every game. And so what I was thinking was, with what they've done with the Chaos Codex recently in bringing out sort of an 8.5 codex with taking stuff from other books and the new stuff and putting it all into it and tweaking some of the stuff and the fixes and stuff they've done and putting it in a new book that you don't need to buy. You can stick with your old Chaos Codex and you can use the stuff from the chapter approved and Vigilus and stuff totally fine. But if you want to, you can upgrade to the new book and have it all in one handy format, which I think is fantastic. And that got me thinking, I would love them to do that with this book. I would really like an 8.5 edition. And what I mean by that is take all the stuff, all the beta rules and the new rules and the changed rules and the fixes to various things and the balances, and edit this book to have all that new stuff in it, and bring that out. That way it is it's an option for people. Now, a lot of people would scream out at that point that, oh, it's GW making more money again, they're just releasing another 8th edition. But you wouldn't need to buy it, because you could continue to bring around your small library with you if you wanted to save money. If you wanted to spend the money and have the convenience, though, of having all the rules in the one book again, this would be great. Because we've reached a point now where when you're playing 40k, if you're just using this book against someone that's playing with, you know, the new rules and stuff, you're playing it wrong. This book is very outdated now, you know, to the point where it's become really confusing. I myself sometimes struggle to remember, is the rule in the rule book still correct, or has that been since corrected in a chapter approved? Things like stratagems, for example, before, if you took a battalion detachment, you get 3 command points. Now you get 5 command points. It's very difficult to remember. That's just one example. There's loads of examples, but it's very difficult to remember. Like, what are the current rules? You know, I know they've tweaked it. Where did I read that rule? You know, if you're having a debate in game with your opponent and you say, oh, I think this is the rule, and they go, well, it says in the rule book this is the rule. You have to remember. I've found myself through games flipping through chapter approved, thinking I'm sure it's in here, or going through the websites, looking for the erratas and FAQs to see if it's been in there. It's complicated and it's tricky, and it's what's originally started as a very streamlined version of 40k has got a little over complex. And I don't think any of the changes and stuff they've brought in have been wrong. I just think it's become to a stage now where it's become a bit cluttered and a little bit difficult to sort of keep track of and keep up to date with, because it's changing and evolving so rapidly these days, so much quicker than it ever did in the past, which again, like I say, is a good thing. But is it time for them to release an 8.5? Or is it time for them to wipe the slate clean again and do a 9th edition? However, like I said, I don't really want a new edition. I like this edition of the game. I like the way it is. I just think they need to streamline it a little bit again and condense all these new rules and things into one handy format that is fully up to date again. And then, like I say, that being an optional extra, you know, an optional purchase for us. You wouldn't need, but it would make your life a lot easier. And I for one, would probably spend the money on getting an 8.5 rulebook that's, you know, been updated with all the tweaks and balances and polishes. But I guess if they were to release a 9th edition, that's effectively probably what it would be. We've seen it through other editions, you know, when they went from 3rd to 4th to 5th. There wasn't huge changes in those editions. They were effectively still the same game. You know, if you could play one, you could play the other. And they were effectively just tweaks and slight changes and stuff that did bring about with them some big changes on the tabletop. But effectively, the game was the same. 6th and 7th brought in, you know, things like the formations and stuff, and really sort of ruined the game, in my opinion. But 8th has been a real wipe the slate clean, whole fresh new start, and it's been fantastic, in my opinion. So I don't, if they were to bring out a 9th, I wouldn't want any drastic changes, and I don't think there would be. I think there would be tweaks, and I think they would bring in some elements and stuff and add additions to it and things. But I wouldn't want them to change it drastically. I've seen people talking about how they would like to change the turn system to sort of a unit by unit rather than my turn, your turn. I personally wouldn't like that. I think if you start taking it that far, it's no longer 40k. You're changing the game so drastically. And there are faults to that system, but it is what it is. It's the system that we are used to, and that would be very drastic in my opinion. Also changing it from D6 to sort of like D10 or D12 and things like, again, I don't really want that. I like the D6 system. Again, it does have its limitations and flaws, but I like 40k. I like 40k as it is. I really like it. I would just like to not be able to cart around 100 books when I have a game. So yeah, I would like them to do, and not just with the rule book, but also with the codexes. I would love them to do for the orcs what they did for Chaos, and in the future possibly, you know, put in the detachments and things from Vigilus and things, and who knows, in the future with future campaigns and hopefully new units and things, just add them in and maybe bring some units from the index back into the codex. That would be cool. I'm probably asking for a bit much there. But yeah, another streamlined, condensed codex with updated stuff in it, and all the fixes and tweaks put in there. And look, GW would make a lot of money off this. I think a lot of us, for our own sort of sanity and making it easier on ourselves, would love to have this information in the form of one book. And I think we would quite happily, well, I say happily, I think we would pay our money and get these books. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it, guys. Anyway, but like I say, 9th edition at the moment is just rumours and speculation. I'm sure it is being worked on. There's been speculation that it could come out, you know, next year. Personally, I would like a year or two out of this edition before we got a new one. But in the meantime, an 8.5 I think would be very welcome. It would certainly help me out and stop my brain trying to keep track of all these beta rules and new rules and balances and points changes and everything else that comes with it, because it is a right ball ache keeping track of all that. But anyway, guys, yeah, like I say, it's a bit of a rambly video there from me, just sharing some of my thoughts on that. But share your thoughts below. Are you desperate for 9th edition to come out? I'm sure people that don't like 8th are desperate for 9th edition to come out. Or would you like them to sort of streamline it and sort of bring it all back into one book rather than the small library? As always, guys, share your comments below. Hit the like button. Hit that subscribe button. And for now, this is 6+ Stevo, signing out.